Hey everybody, Jude Inc. here, A Thorn for Your Heart, and just wanted to say thank you for downloading this project and for hopefully watching these tutorials, given their length, to learn this how to do your own faces for your own mods or for whatever projects that you're working on, or just to get a general understanding of how things work with Neverwinter Nights 2. Just a few things I wanted to touch base with before we begin. The first being that I use Blender 2.79. And I use the plugin tool for 2.79 found on the Neverwinter Vaults. You can also find this in the Nexus mods. For those who are using Blender 2.8 or 2.81, understandably you will be using the Fresh Looks tools. I don't really cover that in my tutorial. If you're using 2.7 or 2.8 and 2.81, you can find more help with how to get those, how to use those tools with by contacting someone on the Neverwinter Nights 2 Discord, Creators Discord, or you can also ask on the Neverwinter Vault forums, and people can help you out there. Pretty much what I do though in 2.79, you should be able to do in 2.8 and 2.81 fairly easy enough. The interface may be a little different, but all in all, everything pretty much is nearly alike. So you should have no issues or no big issues there. Secondly, I use Photoshop CS6 and the NVIDIA texture tools for editing my DDS files and for importing and exporting my DDS files, which are the file format that we use for Neverwinter Nights 2 models. Now, if you don't know what DDS is, that's no problem. I kind of explain a little bit of it, of what it is when we do the tutorial. It's not really important. It's just a format that we use. Just like JPEG, PNG, those formats are. DDS is just the format that the game engine reads to apply textures to models. It's not a big deal if you don't know too much about it. Okay, but I'm also saying that because for those who do not have Photoshop, you can use GIMP. GIMP works with PSDs from what I recall. And you can also convert the PSD over to a GIMP format, and it does back and forth, vice versa. So I see no reason why you shouldn't. Paint.net also works. You can find that in the Microsoft Store. Very cheap, but it works with importing and exporting DDS files. Some of the advanced methods that I use in Photoshop, if you're more versed in GIMP, you'll have to find ways to get those to work for you. Same thing goes with Paint.net. I don't use plugins or anything like that you have to buy or anything like that. But for GIMP, I know it has its own filters and plugins and mixing tools that you could use for yourself. So those two things being the only things to do with design or the program software that I'm using. You can also find third-party software online that works with PSDs or online converting tools that will convert your files from PSD to whatever type of file format that best works for your software. The next thing I want to touch base on is the length of these videos. They are pretty long, but they have a lot of information that I feel is important for a lot of designers to learn for creating faces and for creating any type of model in Neverwinter Nights 2. So you can pretty much take the knowledge from this and apply it to different types of things like weapons, armors, outfits, shields, whatever. It all pretty much falls hand in hand. But in this particular tutorial series, you'll be learning for faces. I will be showing you how to apply textures using these tools to some of the faces, how to do normal maps, specular maps, how to attach beards, how to apply horns, and and how to even do face tattoos using a female head model that I provide in these files. I would advise you to take breaks in between. If you feel like this is getting long or it's dragging on, you don't have to just sit there and do it all in one go. You don't need to. You don't need me to tell you to take a break. So take a break if you need to. Okay. And secondly, I had some people have told me in the past that I have music in the background. It's kind of distracting because they like to play their own music or have their own audio going. So I pretty much have a clean background. So hopefully this doesn't get too boring. So apply some music if you need to. Have fun with it. And all in all, I hope you come out of this tutorial series learning a lot more than you know now, obviously. But all in all, thank you again for downloading this project, and I hope you learn from it. So I won't keep blabbing on, and we're just going to jump right into it. Thanks, everybody. Bye. If you downloaded all the files from the Neverwinter vaults that I put out, it should look something like this. Granted, it may look a little different depending on the version that I put out and the final product, because as you see right now, even under default female head, I have nothing in here. When you receive the files, it'll have all the files in there. The only reason it's like that right now is because right now I'm kind of making a tutorial for the male head, so I have all the male head files in here. When you extract your files, it would be best if you put them all in a folder. Doesn't matter where you put that folder. Mine's just called Die Faces, and the reason it's called Die Faces is because all the models, all of the textures were extracted from Dragon Age Inquisition, and I managed to put them into their own well, they're pretty much in their own maps and their own PSD files, so you can pull and take from them and create your own faces. You'll see what I mean when we get into that. But generally, how I have the file set up here is just for my own way of, I guess, my own workflow and how to get things done faster. Basically, we have our default female and male head. I put them as 00 so they stay on top if you organize them by name. We have our Blender files. One of these Blender files, what I'm putting in here is the Blender scenes. This is pretty much of the main vanilla files. If for any reason you delete your originals, you can always export from these scenes. And the reason why I have these structured in the way I do is because if you open up these Blender scenes, each file, the textures, it won't be able to find the textures if the textures aren't in the relative directory, which means if they aren't in the directory right before the actual scene. So pretty much these files textures are kind of in tow with are based off the directory in which you'll find these in the textures that correspond with it. Sorry, I was kind of blabbing there. Now, that being said, what I want to do is pretty much I want to go ahead and, for starters, let's go ahead and copy the default male head over to our override folder. And as you see, my override folder is empty. I prefer to keep it empty, but what I'm going to do first, I'm just going to create a folder here and just call this my mod faces. I should have capitalized my mod faces. Okay, and so I want to do that is because if you start working out of the override, sometimes the faces don't show. It's just something that happens. So always create a folder inside your override to start working inside. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to open up my default male heads, and I'm going to copy all of this inside here. I'm just going to highlight, and I'm going to press Control C for copy, and then I'm going to press Control V for paste. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and shoot back one. Now I'm just gonna drop this down, and for a second I'm gonna show you what's inside here. So basically what we have here is we have the PHHM head 02, which is the playable human male head 02. And I put a skeleton file in there, a GR2 file, which pretty much every head you make from here on out will require this GR2 file to assist with it. So wherever directory you have the head, have the GR2 file. And if you plan to distribute these to other people and other players, other mods, you'll want to make sure you have this these files correlating with it, or else you'll get this broken face effect going on when you play. I call it the shotgun effect, whereas if someone just shot someone in the face with a shotgun and it kind of got stuck that way. If you don't know what that means, that's fine. For those who are modders understand what that means, that's what happens. So basically, this head consists of 6 textures that go within it. The MDB file is the actual model. The DDS files and TGA files are textures. And pretty much this model has a diffuse map, a normal map, and a tint map assigned to it. Same thing for the eye, as a diffuse map, normal map, and tint map. A diffuse map is primarily a map that just has the information of the physical information, like the skin tones, the color, and kind of like just the whole skin makeup. The normal map contains both the normal and specular map, and what that does is it just kind of defines how light bounces off the subject, how light bounces off and how it reacts to the model itself. I'll explain more in depth when we get to creating that. And the tint map pretty much is just a red block, and it pretty much it tells the engine, the NwN2 2 engine, how to determine what colors what on a map according to the model. Same applies for the human eye textures. Now in this folder we have a backup face. What I did here is I just threw this, it's the same as this one, it's just renamed to head 01. I do the backup face in here just in case you mess up and you always want to pull. Whenever I'm working, I always create a backup face, simply in case I accidentally mess this one up to a point of no return. I don't want to have to go back into my original files and pull out recreate a new face and all that. Instead, I will just kind of pull. So never touch the backup face unless you absolutely are sure you know what you're doing. That's just my recommendation. So without prolonging this, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. So once you have these files in here, I am going to go ahead and open up Blender. And what we're going to do here is we are simply going to change out this file. Actually, you know what? Let's not open up Blender. Let's go ahead and pull that folder back up. One tool we are going to need is we are going to need the cloner tool. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the MDB cloner tool. Now, my download will not have this tool in it because it is not my property to redistribute. Instead, I will go ahead and link it in the into the information section. And you can go ahead and get that from there and then use it. So the MDB cloner tool is a very important tool. What it does is it allows you to clone a model and reassign textures to it, because you cannot do that just by itself. You have to be able to go into Blender and reassign the textures that way if you prefer. But I always found this to be easier since a lot of people are kind of hesitant to navigate around the Blender interface. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this file and I'm going to make a copy of this file too. So right now I'm going to go to File, Load, and I'm going to go ahead and load the in my override folder my mod faces where I have it set, and I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go ahead and load the PHHM head 02. And as you can see inside this head, it shows you which files are associated with it. This pretty much tells the model where to find these maps. Not where to find them, but just the name of them. And it'll find them as long as they're within the same hack or directory or override, more importantly. So in this case, this model has the 3 files that I spoke of just earlier. And as for the eyes, right now we have no beards or facial attachments such as horns, so there's a blank. In the next tutorial that I create here, I'll show you how to pull those horns out from a file that I'm providing, and beard, so you can beard your own male models. Once you learn the male model, the female model should come hand in hand, simply because you'd be learning everything that you do for a female except without this, because there's no need to attach a beard. But you may want to attach horns for tieflings, so that may come in handy. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and clone out 2 to make this head 03. And the reason why I'm going to go ahead and do that now is because I'm going to create 2 faces, and I'm going to show you the difference between the 2 faces, okay? So I'm going to create the 3 model now. So I'm going to go ahead and clone that. Now, if you plan to make 7 models, you can go ahead and make 7 models. So you can go 4, 5, and so forth. But right now I'm just going to make 3, and I'm just going to write a PHHM head 03. And what I'm going to do right now is I am going to rename the diffuse map also as well. Even though I haven't created them, I'm going to name them 02, and I'm going to name this one 02. I'm going to keep the text, the tint map the same, because we won't be making modifications to this new head using the tint map. Pretty much, there's no need to change the tint map because that tint map will be used for all of the files. The only thing that will be changed from head 02 to head 03 is a new name. And you know what? For the sake of matching textures, I'm going to actually change this to 03 too. So that way we know that all textures male 03 are going to relate to head 03. This all stays the same too because the eye textures are all going to be sharing the same texture. There's no need, unless you want to create your own special eye, you don't have to. In the original files that I'm providing, I believe I added a few eye textures in there, generic Asimar, half elf, and stuff like that. A tiefling, if you want to go ahead and use those eyes instead, all you have to do is drop that texture into here and then reassign those textures, that eye texture. Normally it'd probably be just a diffuse map to that new eye texture. Hopefully you're still following along, and we can move on from here. So basically what I've done is I've opened up the head 02. I've renamed it to clone to 03. I've also added new diffuse maps to it, an 03 diffuse map and an 03 normal map. And I'm going to press save clone. and it's going to save it in the same spot where I have O2. And what I want to do, as I stated before, is you always want to have a GR2 file associated to that head. In this case, this GR2 file, which is the skeleton file, is scale O2, so it corresponds with head O2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click lightly, and I'm going to go back a little bit and click 3, okay? And I'm going to click enter, and now that 3 scale is associated with the head. So if I were to make head 215, I would duplicate this skeleton, copy and paste, and I'd name it PHHM scale 215 for 215 to match the head 215. This ensures that whenever you distribute your heads, you're not going to get some weird bone issues, because anything after 20, I believe, for humans, you have to start assigning scales too. Simply because the game does not have those skeletons in its vanilla files. It has skeleton files for the first 20 or so, but not after 20. You just want to primarily make it a habit to have those skeleton files in there, okay? So what I'm going to do now is, since I already went ahead and I assigned those new textures that we haven't created yet, Dragon Age Male 3 and Dragon Age Male 3 Diffuse and Normal Map, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the diffuse and normal map here. I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to paste them back in the same spot. Okay, I'm preparing two faces right now. I'm preparing head O2 and head O3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this first one, take out the copy instance. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here, and then go over here, and I'm going to name it O3. And I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. Keep the N, because that's important. What you want to do is name the number, reassign the number. There we go. So now we pretty much have the new textures that we defined here. And so we have our head O2 and head O3. And the reason why I'm not changing this to male O2, because it matches head O2, is because this one's actually using Dragon Age Male O1 too. If that makes, hopefully that I'm not going too fast. Trying to go fast enough, but hopefully you understand what I'm doing here. So pretty much what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fire up Neverwinter Nights 2. Okay, let that start up, bring that up. I'm going to go to new game, new module, and I always select the first module that I have here, uninvited guest, just because it's the fastest way to get into the character creation screen, which is what I want to do to test my heads. You'll see me do that quite often. All right, so I'm going to go to create character, and I'm going to go to humans, leave it on male, click next, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on the face. On the hair, I'm going to go back 3 notches. Usually that puts me at the bald from the vanilla head. So 1, 2, 3. Now he's bald, except that he's not, and I'll explain why in a second. But pretty much, this is the head O1, and we have head O2. If you remember correctly, head O1 and head O2 both share this same map. So this texture, Dragon Age Male O1, is actually this face. And head O3 is actually the same too, because if you remember correctly as well, male O3, which is the new one we created, which is this face, is just a duplicate of male O1. Now what we are going to do is we are going to change male O3. Okay, so we are going to play with male O3, and for just for the giggles, we might jump into male O2, but I'm only doing male O3 right now, pretty much because I want to show you how it works, how this process works. So now that male O3 is done, and this is it, because if we go to 4, it's back to the vanilla files. And by the way, the reason why we put that GR2 file in there is because the one that I've selected in this folder will allow you to get a full custom blink like this one. Whereas some of these faces, see how that doesn't blink all the way? And some of them actually don't blink all the way. Maybe I should go backwards. I think the best example is the very last one. That one. See how it doesn't blink all the way? And that's because that skeleton file is rigged that way. I pulled out the skeleton and I've duplicated it and I put it in here. The one that gives you the most pronounced blink is what you'll want to do, especially for this file. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to begin working on this first head. Sorry, that shouldn't have fallen. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Dragon Age Male 03D. Now, you don't have to name yours Dragon Age. You can rename it to whatever you want. Just make sure that whatever you rename it to, you associate it properly to the MDB via the MDB cloner. So if you were to name it, I don't know, my mod, whatever underscore 1D, just make sure you have that my mod whatever underscore head D here. Same thing for the text and tint. Else you'll get this little colorful box saying texture missing. And if we move anything out of here while the game is live, if we were to move this face into this folder and we went off the face and back on the face, you'll also get that missing texture. It's because when you load up the game, it loads where those textures are located within your directory. And if it, for any reason, you move it or modify it, it will not be able to find it until the next reload, which is pretty much at this point restarting the game. Okay, so just in case you run into that error, there's your fix. What I'm going to do now is I am going to go ahead and open up this file to modify it. We are going to open up the diffuse map. So go ahead and double click that. I'm using Photoshop CS6. I'm using the NVIDIA plugin tools. You can find that on Firefox by simply typing in NVIDIA DDS tools or texture tools. And I believe if you are using CC 2020 or any of its predecessors in or around 2020, a DDS plugin comes in with it. I could be wrong. So does a normal map plugin. But I assume since the normal map, I haven't really used 2020 in a while. I used 219 when I was working media. I haven't updated 2020 since I relocated, and I haven't had to work a lot of media jobs. And so I'm just going to press OK here, let that load up. But this is using the texture tool. You'll get that prompt. You always want to press OK. And pretty much this is the diffuse map, all right? Now, the diffuse map is pretty much what you'd get if you were to take this map, run a scalpel along the skin, and I don't mean that gruesomely. I just mean that in a very surgical sort of way, and you pretty much unwrap the face, and you were to lay it flat, you would get something like this. Now, it looks creepy, but this is pretty much a flattened version of this face, except that this face kind of wraps around the model. Okay, so that being done. What I'm going to do is I am going to simply show you how to change out this face using the files that I provided. So I'm going to go back into my original files here, and I'm going to go ahead and open up, and if you're following along, go ahead and open up Jude Inc. Face Creator Diffuse Maps. Now, the reason it's Diffuse Maps is because this is obviously a diffuse map. When we open up a normal map, we'll get into those ones. But let's go and open up a diffuse map. Keep in mind, it is a big file size. It is 400 megabytes. So you're about to find out why it's so hefty. So when we open up layers, we have everything kind of in groups here. And what I've done is I've already went ahead and I separated the groups out for you, so that way it's easier for you to construct a good workflow of how you want to create your faces. Now, pretty much, I'm going to go through these in a very fast and simple way. I apologize if it seems if the vernacular is not always on spot, but I'm going to try to use the tools up here or all the options up here instead of using shortcuts. That way you can follow along. Then at the end, use a shortcut just to show you how fast it is. So when you're creating your face, I have it set up. You want to start from the bottom up. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find your head base. Now, I provided different head bases in here. There are different ones. There's a freckly one. There's one with a little 5 o'clock shadow, one with no shadow. And for the sake of this one, I'm going to go with this one, just for the hell of it. And if we zoom in a little bit, we see that this one here has a little bit of freckles going on, a little bit of some wrinkles there. I want to say that some sort of just some face impurities, okay? And so I'm going to choose that head. And what I'm going to do after I choose my head, I'm going to view this, turn the visibility on, go ahead and collapse the box. I'm going to open up head extras. Now, head extras are they're pretty much, if you look at it, they're really just more basic heads, except that they have a little bit of extra on them. Like this one has deep eye sockets. This one has some bruising and some face imperfections. This one has the older wrinkling, maybe some aging on it. And what I want to do is if I turn it on, let's say I want one of these. Let's say I want I'm going to go with the bruising, okay? Just for the hell of it, because we really want to make an impact on how different these faces will show. And if we just turn it on, we're automatically overriding the other one because our opacity is set to 100. So this one is overriding our base. So what we want to do is we have options here. We can turn down the opacity, of course, if you want just a light, subtle bruise. Maybe very light, up to you. You can turn it up more, or you can start playing with the actual with the mixers here and with the overlays. And so what we can do is we can actually put it on overlay, and we kind of get a mixture of the two. Now, of course, the highlights of this face mix with the highlights of this face, and make a more drastic highlight, whereas the shadows do the same thing. So you got like some really pronounced reds in there. That's fine. You can, as I said, you can mess around with it. You can turn the contrast down a little more if you're not happy with it. Maybe put it on a multiply if you just want to have a darker face in general. You can put it on a color dodge. See what happens there. Some weird results. You may not want to use that. Some may. I don't know. Soft light, same thing. With it off, with it on. But either way, you're mixing these two to get your definite base. And these are probably the only two you'll be mixing the most to get your definite base. And for me, I'm just going to put it on overlay. And I'm going to turn this down to about maybe 70%, okay? So we got somewhat of a bruised face there, okay? I'm going to collapse that box, collapse the box under it, because that was just for demonstration. And then we have preset heads. Now, this is a third volume of mixing if you want to get into this. Preset heads are pretty much the NPCs within the game and the PCs. But pretty much we have here you know, we have Colin's head. And this is the one it's actually using, I believe. Could be this. Let's turn down that one. This is the head we're using as of right now. So it even has this head. So and that's this one, but it has all of them. It just has different. There's even female heads in here too if you want to kind of mix both. That's Josephine's head. We have Leilana here. But pretty much what I'm gonna do for the sake of this tutorial, I'm gonna try to use as much as possible to show you what can be done. What I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna grab Samson. Now, whenever I edit ahead, I can go ahead and edit this, but because I'm showing you as I go different techniques, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just want to pull out the beard from this head. That's all I want to do. I don't want this hair up here, because the reason why you got hair here is because a lot of these faces, and especially this one, it has hair built onto the diffuse map, and the normal map allows the hair. It also has that. So what we want to do is I want to make a completely bald head. I don't want hair. And that's why if you look underneath it, I had chose these heads because they're pretty much bald. All base heads are bald. Now, I do want the beard. I want some of the stuff from this face. So what I'm going to do, instead of working on this file, I want to try to keep this whole PSD file, this Photoshop file, intact without messing with the original things that are on it, because I may come back to it to make a new head. And if I start erasing everything off this one, there's no way for me to get it back unless I re-download the PSD from the vault and redo that. And let's face it, it's a big download. No one wants to do that. So my advice for you is to simply go here and go ahead and right click the layer, and you can put duplicate layer. Okay, it's going to say what do you want to name it as, and just leave it as is, and just put copy, right? And okay, and just press copy, and it's going to duplicate it right above it. Okay, a shortcut for that is just pressing Control J. So I'm going to press delete, and I'm just going to press Control J, and it duplicated the layer. All right, and so what I'm going to do is, now that I duplicated it, I'm going to turn off the original because I never want to work on the original. That's our backup. These are all backups. Okay, now the copy we can play with. That's no big deal. So what I'm going to do for the copy, I was going to use the eraser tool, but I'm going to show you how to use a mask right quick. So I'm going to click this little guy here, and this is pretty much add a layer mask. And what that's going to do is pretty much anything that I color here now is going to bleed through, and what I don't's not going to bleed through. And in order to color a layer mask, instead of using the eraser tool, I'm going to click B for brush. But if not, you want to come over here and highlight the brush tool. And you want to go ahead and turn your opacity down to 50 and your flow down to 50. That's just for starters. If you know what you're doing and you're more advanced, you can turn those to whatever you'd like. But pretty much the higher the opacity and the higher the flow, the more intense the brush will be. And you want to make sure you're on a soft brush, so you can click this first one. And you want to make sure that you're turning down your brush to about, maybe on this case for these faces, you want to work at about 250. Okay. And 250 is a decent size. Now you can go a little bigger if you want. At the most, I'd recommend maybe 300 or like 400. I'm just gonna roughly say 411 just for the hell of it. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to brush away what I want to show on the face underneath. So remember, underneath we have a bald head, okay? And so what I'm going to do here is make sure, because your mask is pure white, whatever is white allows this layer to show. Whatever you paint black will allow this layer to blend through from the bottom layers underneath it, which is our heads that we chose down here. So by saying that, I have the black color chosen, and I want to make sure our keep an eye on what's going on here. So if I were to go through the eyes and just kind of softly paint over them, and you see what's going on here is pretty much whatever we paint black, we're dismissing from the top layer. And that's what I want to do. I want to kind of, you know, I want to let the underlayer bleed through. Now, if you start looking, you got two different colors here, which is kind of weird, right? You got like this darker skin and lighter skin here, which is why I generally don't like going this route, okay? I generally like to, and I'm going to undo that. The reason why I did that is so you understand how that works. But if we were to, I don't want to undo all that. What I'm going to do here is simply go into this little box. I'm going to go to Edit Fill, and I'm going to turn it all black. Okay, if it's on for a reason, any on one of these, just go here and put black and press OK. Now, there's also a shortcut to allow for that. I'm going to undo that, and if you hit Alt Backspace, you get Fill with Black, which is the foreground color. And if you press Control Backspace, you'll fill with the background color. All right. In this case, black is our foreground, so we want to make sure we hit Alt Control or Alt Backspace. Okay. And now that we've done that, we pretty much made this entire layer transparent. Because remember what we said? Whatever's white allows the layer to be seen. Whatever's black allows the layer not to be seen. Pretty much takes away the visibility. And instead, what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and twist these two colors around. Go ahead and click that, or click X. Okay, and I'm going to make sure I have my white brush now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of paint in the beard that I want. Okay, now it's still going to be dark, but we're going to fix that right now in a bit. And I want this beard to really show through. Okay, because I already know where the beard's at. I kind of look at this. These faces are all aligned properly. So I kind of have an idea of where I'm painting. You know, like I know exactly where to paint because this face is kind of giving me good reference. Now, as you can see here, I kind of overstepped. I went over here. Now you have hair showing from behind the ears here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click X. X is going to bring up my black paintbrush. And as stated here, anything that's black doesn't allow the layer to seep through. So I don't want the layer to show this part. So I'm going to recolor this back in kind of softly. And if you want to resize your brush to do that, you can. You can even zoom in. In this case, I'm not going to do that because I don't really have a need to. It's pretty simple. And there's our beard. So we stole the beard from this face, okay? Now what we're going to do to make this beard match this color, we're going to click on here. And we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. And then we're going to turn up, actually, because levels might be confusing for some, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, and Contrast. And I'm just going to turn up the brightness some, just until I get a good idea. And the contrast, maybe a little more, a little less, up to you. But I'm pretty much going to turn up the brightness some, so it's just a little bit bright to match the face. Now, if you go too bright, then yeah, you might get some stuff going on there. But you can pretty much eyeball it to how you like. If you're advanced with Photoshop, you don't have to use this. You can use the levels tool. But for the sake of beginners, let's go ahead and put this on 70. I think that gets me where I want. I can put this back on 0. There's also legacy if you want to use a legacy brightness, which overall brightens everything as if you have some sort of filter over it. I don't recommend it. So I'm just going to go back here how I had, I think 70 is where it was a good stand. I'm going to press OK. And if because I've been working Photoshop for a while, I can tell right now it's a little bit pale in comparison to everything else on the face. So I'm just going to go to Image, Adjustments. Make sure you're on the actual thing here, the file, Image, Adjustments, and maybe a hue saturation. And you just want to saturate the face just a little more, just to give it a more some blood going through the face, because it looks like the face has a lot of reds in it. And if you need to adjust the hue a little bit, I'm going to make it just a little bit red to match the face, just a little bit, maybe -3 points. Now that all varies on the face you're running, okay, the face you're using, and maybe this at 15, okay. I'm going to press OK, and there we go. And that's just a method that you don't have to use these. That's just me showing you how to use them. All right. I'm going to go ahead and collapse that box. We don't need it no more. Pretty much a lot of the work is done. This is all extras now. All right. Now, if we want to add scars, I'm not going to go and show you how to do that. This is more for advanced. So if you don't know how to use these, I would not recommend using them. But pretty much for a scar, what you want to do is you want to activate a scar. Okay. And you're going to have to invert the properties of the scar. So I'm going to click Control, or I'm going to actually go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Image Adjustments. Invert. And then you have to kind of work it from there, because you have to start playing around with your layers, and go into like how you want the scar, and then you got to go and clean it up physically using the same method I use for the beard, or an eraser, or whatever you prefer. Now, there are other ways to get scars. If you just like kind of Google scars PNG files, you'll find some pre-made scars, and you can kind of throw those on the face if you want stuff like that. DeviantArt also. Or you can draw one if you're that skilled. If you're good with the pen and pad, you can draw some stuff on these faces to get these faces done, okay? So, I'm going to turn off scars because we don't need that. Now, we have different types of face paints. Now, first, before we get into paints, let's go into hairs. So, we have the hairs here that are pulled out from different models. And this is if you want to give your character a kind of plain vanilla hair that goes underneath. Now, for something hairs like this, for example, I recommend kind of turning it down some. Maybe so much on the beard, because that will really start looking like someone painted on his face. It's kind of tricky. It takes a little bit of method, but if you want to have like some hairs on your characters pre-made like this, you can. My only issue is that when some of these hairs, when you have hairs like this one, you kind of get this hair showing underneath. And I know how some people are perfectionists. Anybody who's posted anything ever on the vaults knows how people can be perfectionists and demand perfection from your stuff. But pretty much, it sometimes when you have that bald head, as I showed you just in that hair alone right here as I was talking, you kind of get this clash. Now, some people may like that, some may not, all by your preference. So you decide what you want to do. I'm going to go back to the bald one now. But pretty much that's if you'd like to add a hair to your model. In this case, I'm not going to add one, but I just want to show you what's out there. And as I said before, if you want to kind of add any of these to your textures, just make sure you duplicate and work from the duplicate. Mess around with it. Kind of lighten the hair. Maybe brush out some of this and give them like a different type of goatee or whatever you'd like. Up to you. All your choice. But that's pretty much scalp hair. Okay? And we have tribal paint. So next ones we have war paint, tattoos, and tribal paint. I'm going to explain how to edit one, but pretty much how you edit one is how you edit all three. Okay? So tribal paints are pretty much just as spoken, pretty much as if someone put tribal paint on your face. These are more like, they're somewhat hand-drawn, but they're more like tribal, as stated. And then you have stuff like tattoos, which are same thing, tribal, but in their own way, they seem more pronounced, more sharper, more just more blockier, like an actual tattoo would be. And there's different ones, and we also have war paint. Now, war paint is a little bit more chalkier, and it goes this war paint would cover the skull, as you can see around the head. The hair would be painted white, which is a pretty cool thing. And you're saying like, why is it covering the face like that? Well, there's a reason why, and the reason why they're all white is because, and I'm just gonna work with just one because it reflects all the others. The reason why it's all white is because I want you to be able to take these into the tint map and allow the tint to, if you so choose, if you'd like from character creation, for the tint to be able to color these so a player can select the color for their war paint. You want to make sure they're white on the diffuse map, so that way when they select the color, it's not going to battle any color that you have here. So white will allow them to let the color seep through naturally, instead of having to battle through the actual color that you pre-assign it. And what better than white? So I'm going to use this as my example. And if you're using a war paint, like one of these, that's fine. Just whatever one you decide to use, and you don't have to use one. You can use as many as you like. It's your faces. All right. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the layer and click OK. I'm going to turn off the original layer because, as I said, we don't work on our backups. And for this one, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to put this on overlay. Okay. Actually, no, I'm going to put it on multiply. Actually, no, I'm going to put it on screen. I'm going to double click and go into the actual thing. And this is the same thing. When you go double click on the layer, you go into the layer styles. And this pretty much allows you to go into what's here anyway. And in this case, I had it on color dodge. I'm just going to put it back onto, I'll say like soft light. So soft light gives me like this effect. You can go to hard light. Either way, there's just different ways of playing with it. You can turn down the light itself. Difference, you get some weird results. I'm just going to kind of scroll through them so you get an idea of what's what. It's going to kind of go up until it runs out. Now, there's really not much options there. And the reason why I went into it, I guess, is primarily just to show you this color overlay. If I want to make it to a point where I don't want players to color it, let's say I'm making an NPC and I don't want to have time to color, I just want to make the face here. I'm going to go to click color overlay and I'm going to choose a color. In this case, I'm just going to make it like maybe a blood red. Okay, something like that. All right. And then you can either turn down the opacity or you can mess with the blend modes within here. Alright, there's different types. Now, if I just kind of scroll through them, you see how it works. Now, these aren't always as proficient as they would be. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click normal, leave it on normal. I'm going to click OK. And what I've done here is this layer now has an effect called color overlay on it. Now, if I edit within here again, it's because this is an effect. It's not necessarily tied as a permanent thing to the layer. These aren't really going to do much. But if I were to right click this layer and I go to rasterize layer style, that just pretty much means flatten the entire layer. Now the layer is pretty much, if you look in this box, it's stuck with that color. It's part of the original thing. So now if I go into these, it's part of that original layer now. Now if I go into these settings and I were to click overlay, I get like this result, which is a whole new result. You know, and this is something creative. Like if I want multiply, darken, and I'm just kind of going through them. It's kind of tricky. Working with it takes a little bit of experience. You can mess with them. You don't have to, but pretty much, I think overlay would give it. This is more of a natural because when you paint your face red, depending on how there's multiply, which means it makes it really darker, or soft light, which makes it really light, depending on, I guess, the quality of the paint you're using. I don't know. It's just, you know, that makes it really dark. Or normal. Okay. I'm going to leave it normal for the time being. And I know that doesn't look really cool. Doesn't look really great. But I'm just going to leave it like that just so we can see how that looks on the actual face, the final face. Now, the same applies for tattoos and war paint, except that I'm not going to do the same thing for them. If you wanted to apply a new war paint over that, you can make that face really busy, up to you. All right, that's how you work those. Now we have beards. Beards are pretty much just add-ons. Like this has a beard and some hair on the side. This is more of the Captain Picard from the Star Trek look, where you have the bald head and you got the hair on the side, some white beard. And the reason why these are white as well is because you want to be able to color these too if you want to make them selectable. Else, if you want to make them brown or black, just do as I did with this this tribal paint. Is I just duplicate the layer, apply a layer style, make it black, or just color it in general. Up to you. Okay. So I'm going to turn off the beards. I don't want a beard. I already have one. I pulled one from the other mask. Okay. Complexions. This is pretty much if you want to add like some really dark eyes, sockets. This is actually a beard to a 5 o'clock shadow. Want to add on top of it. I think I might add that in the end. This is a very lighter shadow. And then we have like some freckles and stuff like that. So I'm just going to copy the shadow just a little bit more, just to give it a little more depth. And you can see it's it's on top of the layer of the color, so that actually helps, because technically the beard wouldn't get colored as much, like it'd still pop out a little bit. So I'm gonna leave it like that. I just put it on 60%. Close that off. We're almost done. Eyebrows. Now eyebrows. I wanna say there's a lot of eyebrows in here. I would recommend. Okay, so there are some that are obviously female, and I think they're more towards the top. Those are female. Eyebrows they can be a little dramatic, and maybe it's the way that they're set here, but pretty much I want to just assign, let's say I'll assign those, and I'll keep them that way. Now, if you want to make eyebrows colorable, because in the options there is a thing called eyebrow color, pretty much when we modify a tint map, I'll show you how to do that when we modify the tint map. But in this case, I'm just going to leave them white. Actually, no, I'm going to color them in, okay? Because I don't like making my eyebrows colorable. It's just something I don't like doing because I'm lazy, I guess. I don't know. But pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I always do, is I duplicate the layer if I want these, okay? And I'm going to click OK, turn off the original, and then what I'm going to do is the same thing I did for the face paint here. I'm going to go to color overlay, okay? I'm going to click on the box to open up its properties, and I'm going to choose just kind of like it's never black. I mean, it can be, but realistically, the eyebrows aren't pure black. They're kind of like an off black. So you kind of, what I do is I go black and I kind of bring it in diagonally, because you go all orange. I kind of go in like that much, and I usually have it set to like one of these colors. It really shouldn't matter at this point where it's at, you know, because you're still generally in the dark area. You can go a little lighter. I'm just gonna go right there. Just press OK. OK. I don't even have to rasterize this, but for the sake of just learning how to do it, making it a habit, I'm gonna go to rasterize layer style. Now it's permanently black. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and close the eyebrows out. And then we have makeup. Some dudes wear makeup, some don't. Up to you. There's some blush here. But this is for the females as well, because this face creator actually applies for both male and female for the heads, since their mapping is universal. Okay, so you can put the eyeliner on it. I don't know, maybe you have a necromancer male that has eyeliner. It's up to you. Lipstick. And as I said, if you want to duplicate that, on duplicate, you also want to change that color. Do the same thing as I did with the makeup here. With the face paint, okay? And then with that, we have this right here. This layer stays on top. The reason that being is this layer is just a black box. That black box is very important because these eyelashes are black by permanence. And you can't see them here, but if you like turn the face sideways a little bit and you look, you got some eyelashes in here. Now, they're not showing as prominent, but they're there. And they're right there too, and it just adds a little more pop to the eye. And pretty much, those eyelashes are covered within the box in the UV mappings, which means if you were to look at the alpha channel of this face, the original face, this one right here, which is controlling the one behind us, the alpha channel shows these little eyelashes, and that's pretty much telling the engine to cut out the eyelashes to show as they are there. So you want to make sure you don't override that, because if not, if I were to, let's say, make this a skin color, those eyelashes are going to come out skin toned. You can change that if you want. If you want to make your character have some green eyelashes, just change that box color to green, and these will turn green, okay? It's a very light change. But for the most part, what I do is I like to keep that layer on top. But here's how we work this. So we're happy with this layer, right? We like it. We want to make this our new face. I'm going to press Alt, Control, Shift, and E, okay? Now, I tried to go up here and I tried finding the shortcut for it. There is no real shortcut for it. Maybe I'm just not finding it. I see Alt Shift Control C, but I don't see the Alt Shift Control E, and it would be under layer. But this is the closest you get to it, is you get merge visible. But if you merge visible, Shift Control E, and you don't press Alt, what's going to happen is it's going to take all of those layers, it's going to delete them and merge them into one. You don't want to delete those layers, because some of those layers we're going to come back to, like this layer would no longer be here. What we want to do is we want to make sure we press Alt, Control, Shift, E, okay? And what that Alt does is it tells the program, the engine, to make a copy of the command. It means execute the command of flattening the image, but with the copy of everything, instead of actually just pulling it in the front. And the reason why I chose to do it above this layer is because in order for that command to execute, you must do it over a visible layer. If I were to do, I'm going to delete this to show you what I mean. If I open up makeup, and since I haven't chosen a makeup and I try to do it here, Alt, Control, Shift, E, nothing will happen because it needs a visible layer to work off of. That's just part of the program. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go above this layer because this layer is visible. It's this little black box. I'm going to press Alt, Control, Shift, E. And because this layer was the last layer on top, even if I turn all of these off, it's still on top because it copied even the black box layer onto the top. Now this is our new face. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Select All or Control A, okay? And we are going to go to Edit, Copy or Control C. We are going to go back into our original face and we are going to click Edit, Paste Special, Paste into Place. One thing I want you to bear in mind is that these files are all 2048 by 2048. People complain. People have argued that 124 and 2048 don't make a difference. They actually do. it all depends on the resolution you're playing at too, but they do. Now, if you're going 4K, it's a little overkill for this game, considering most outfits don't really go at 4K, so you start getting some real big, some real HD issues as far as pixelated content next to regular content. I've been working Photoshop for roughly over 17 years, since 2002, pretty much. Actually before that, yeah, and I've been doing this a while, and I've been to school. I've got my degree in this. I've been doing this. Now there will be those that challenge and say, well, it doesn't, and they'll give you all the stuff they learned. Whatever, it doesn't matter. All I know is, for me, it makes a difference. Diffuse maps, not so much. Diffuse maps, you can make 1K, but normal maps is where the information really comes in, especially when you're messing with the Blender interface, and you're trying to get good specularity and all of that in between. With that being said, the reason I'm bringing this up is because my maps by vanilla are 2K. If you decided to resize your map prior to this and you put paste into place, it's going to be really big, and you're going to have to manually shrink it down. Now, as long as you're working within 2K maps, I think you should be fine. I recommend them, but it's all, like I said, it's your mod. You choose what you'd like to do. But pretty much it should copy into place. So I go to edit, as I did before. I put paste special, paste into place. The shortcut for that is Shift Control V, and it'll paste it right on top. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control E. If what that also does is it goes to layer, it goes to merge down, and I merged it down. And mind you, we're working on a Dragon Age Male 03 Dragon Ale, and I'm going to press Control S, otherwise save. And then it's going to bring up these DDS options if you're using CS6 in the plugin tool. And I am going to select it as DXT3. All diffuse maps will use DXT3. Okay. And I'm going to click save. Now it's going to do this little ring here. It's going to take a moment or two depending on your processing, your computer. And the reason why it takes a little bit instead of like a JPEG is simply because it compresses the file down to a special compression that video games use to help you save space. All right, without losing much quality, with retaining quality, if anything. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is, since I am on head 01, that was head 3. This is face 1, which, as we referenced earlier, is still using Dragon Age Male 01. So we haven't changed that. That's the same. Okay. Then we're going to go to head 2, which is also using Dragon Age Male head 01. But the one we did modify is Dragon Age Male 03. So that should be the next one. Okay. And there we go. And there is our face that we created from the plugin tool. Now the eyebrows are big. You can go ahead and edit that. I like the eyebrows like that. But if you feel the eyebrows are too big, and in this case, I'm making that as an excuse just to show you how to go back in and edit. What we are going to do is we are going to go back into this map. We are simply going to undo what we did here. We don't have to undo. We can simply delete it. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to undo. Okay. I'm going to turn back on the things that I know I had selected. I had that, I had the preset head, I also had the tribal paint. Now, you normally wouldn't have to do this, but because I was showing the tutorial, you can even turn this off. I did so. And I had the eyebrows in there. Did I have complexions? I did. And I don't think I had makeup. Okay, so pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the eye. Oh, I got to change that because there's no such thing as eye to bows. Okay. So I'm just going to go in here real quick and rename this while I caught this. Yeah. Nobody's perfect. Okay. And then I'm going to go back into the one that I had chosen, which is this one. And I'm going to hit Edit Transform. Okay. Or Free Transform. Okay. Otherwise, Control T. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bring these eyebrows in a little bit. You can hold Shift if you like, if you want to move them in unison. In this case, I'm not going to hold Shift. I'm just going to hit Control E. I'm just going to kind of bring them in on the side. Just a little bit. In this case, I'm going to use the reference here. 670 pixels. Okay. I'm going to press Enter. Now they're off balance. So I'm going to kind of come in here. I'm going to kind of balance them visually. In order to do that, I might have to turn off the tribal paint. And I'm going to kind of And this just pretty much what I did is I just kind of brought them in. I highlighted them all. I transformed them. I pulled them in. I made them. I pretty much made them smaller. See how I did that? And then what I did here is I'm kind of using the undo and redo. Is I made them smaller. Okay, by bringing them in, and then I recentered them pretty much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back on that war paint, that tribal paint that I had here. And then I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go on my top layer again and press Alt, Control, Shift, E once more. I'm going to hit Control A for select all, otherwise select all. And then edit copy. I'm going to go back into my face. And I'm going to just overwrite that one by hitting Control, Shift, V, paste in place. And then layer, merge down, or Control E, and then Control S for save. It should be saved out this. It always has the plugin will save whatever last format you use, which is DXT3. Hit save and let that save. And of course, like I said, it takes a second because it compresses down. And then after it's saved, I'm going to click off the head and then back onto the head. And here we go. So I like these eyebrows a little better. They might need to be picked up. They're kind of colliding with the eyebrows underneath, I think. Or actually, no, that's the normal map. So the reason if you're looking at it now, you're like, but what's going on here? I thought we had a bald head. Well, we do, except that the normal map hasn't been modified. And now the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to modify the normal map, okay? So now that we've done the face here, we are going to go into and modify the normal map. And I'm going to show you the technique used for that. And once you do that, so once we get the normal map modified and the specular map, which are easier, by the way, because it doesn't require all of this stuff to go on. It's actually much simpler. We're pretty much going to wrap it up. And then there we go. And we're good to go for changing out the textures. Okay, so with that being said, stay with me and we will continue shortly.